Goaltending. There doesn't seem to be an issue that comes up in the comments in any video that causes more debate than who a better goaltender is among those who are starters in the NHL. And I decided this morning, I thought, you know what, I'm going to come up with my own, who I think are the top 10 starters in the NHL right now. And I had to leave some really good goaltenders off that top 10 list. I had to basically knock off some of my favorite goaltenders off that top 10 list. Because I think goaltending is the best it's ever been right now in hockey history. And I know you can look back, you can point out Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, Patrick Roy, basically Montreal, or Glenn Hall, Terry Sawchuk. But those were singular goalies. And what I'm saying is right now we're in an era where there are a lot of guys who at the end of their careers are going to have numbers that are startling compared to the numbers put up by goaltenders 20 years ago and especially 30 years ago. There's not a single goaltender in the 80s that could survive in today's game based on their numbers. Just based on their numbers alone. There's not one. That doesn't mean that if you took Grant Fuhr, Andy Bogan, all them, and you plunked them into today's generation, they wouldn't adapt and get better. They would. But it's a special group. And it is really hard to break into the top 10 of anything right now in the NHL. So I'm going to take a shot at who I think are the top 10 starters in the NHL. At number 10, I have Tuukka Rask of Boston. He had an off year. He had some iffy games, but the entire Boston defense had a poor year. And I still think Tuukka Rask is capable of being the difference maker. I mean, he would have been top 5 going into last season, and having him at number 10 shows that I've dropped him down. And he's the only goaltender from one of my 3 favorite teams who's even made the cut, so there's no favorites being played here, although it would be really hard for me to find a realistic reason to put Ryan Miller in the list, or Kari Lehtinen, or Antti Niemi, or Jakob Markstrom. I mean, it would be a stretch to put any of them anywhere near a top list for goaltenders right now. Miller's a good goaltender, don't get me wrong, but he's not in this class of goaltender. Number 9, I have Martin Jones of San Jose. He proved himself last year. I always believed that he was a really good goaltender. It's the Kiprusoff effect, where you're stuck behind a good goaltender, but you might be better than the guy you're stuck behind. Kiprusoff was stuck behind Nabokov, and Nabokov was a fantastic goaltender for San Jose, but Kiprusoff, once he got to Calgary, showed that he was a little bit better. Jones hasn't proven that yet. He hasn't proven he's better than Quick, but and for everybody who's gonna, say, oh, what about the playoffs? That's one series. Okay, Quick has earned a mulligan, and I think last year was his mulligan. Now, if it happens again this year, Quick could be looking for another job, because there are a lot of goaltenders vying for not very many jobs. And, you look at what's going on with Pittsburgh and Tampa, and they have young guys coming up, and a lot of teams have young guys coming up, and I think goaltending is just going to get stronger league-wide. I think goal scoring could go down even further because goaltenders are getting that much better. Number 8, I have Bobrovsky in Columbus. I would put him higher if I could justify it, because I like Bobrovsky. I think he's a very good goaltender. But he does play for a team that underachieves basically every year. It's an annual move on their part to underachieve in Columbus. And maybe they get overrated a bit, but regardless, I still consider Bobrovsky one of the better starters in the NHL. And I think he's going to have a bounce back year. Number 7, I have Henrik Lundqvist. This is the reason I put the list together, because the question is Lundqvist still? Yeah, he is. He's lost a step, just a little bit, but he is still one of the best goalies in the league. And if I was going to a Game 7 situation, he might be the guy I would call on first, based on his ability to get up. I think what happened with Lundqvist last year, too, was he was very angry. There were numerous times where he got very angry with his teammates. And I think it affected his game. He got very emotional. Now we can debate over whether he got emotional because he's losing a step and he's realizing it and he's upset, or if he's emotional because the Rangers defense wasn't bailing him out. He wasn't getting any help. But regardless of what it is, I'm still putting him at number 7 on this list. I still think he's capable of it. And we'll see what happens this year. Number 6, I have Corey Crawford in Chicago. And this is his starters. And Crawford is a solid starter for Chicago. I don't think he faces the quality chances that some of the other goalies in the NHL do. I think his save percentage is probably inflated a bit above where it would be if he played, say, in Arizona or for the Rangers. I think, if he played for a team whose defense wasn't as solid as Chicago's, I think his goals against to go up and his save percentage to go down. But he is good enough, and he does have those cup rings. But 6 isn't a bad spot for him. 5, I have Jonathan Quick in LA. I know, but a .918 save percentage last year isn't bad. That's the low bar for him, and I really think he is capable of a bounce back. The funny thing is, I would pick Quick for a bounce back, but not the Kings. I could see Quick's save percentage going up to .924, .925 this year, and yet his win totals don't get any better because the Kings aren't getting any better. Maybe his save percentage goes up because he's facing 30 shots a night, 35 shots a night. And so it's just a matter of, his goals against doesn't get any better, but his save percentage goes up, that kind of thing. 4, I have Ben Bishop in Tampa. I know there's a lot of people waiting for Vasilevsky to take over in Tampa, and where does Ben Bishop go? The problem is, and I think Yzerman knows this, Bishop's one of the best starters in the league. And he has the ability to really dominate when he's on his game. When he got hurt, Vasilevsky was the starter for Tampa. That did affect the team. And they could have won the cup with Bishop. I think they could have knocked out Tampa if they had Bishop in that. Bishop's damn good goaltender. Number 3, this is where it gets really tough. I have Corey Schneider at 3 in Jersey. And anybody who follows this channel at all knows that as a huge Canucks fan, I was gutted and still am that Corey Schneider's not a Vancouver Canuck. He should have been a Canuck for life in my eyes anyways. He'll be a Devil for life because the Devils aren't going to be stupid enough to trade him. And all he needs is the playoff spotlight. I don't know that he's going to get that in Jersey. He won't get it this year, I don't think. I really don't. I don't see Jersey in the playoffs. They would need to do some serious moving around of players and potentially go back to just playing the trap if they wanted to make the playoffs, because they don't have the talent up front to outscore teams, and their blue line is average. So Corey Schneider is their lone shining star, and the best way to really improve your chances of winning with that system is to play the trap, which Jersey invented. Well, Montreal kind of invented it because it was always Montreal coaches that played the trap at the start. But yeah, Schneider is my favorite goalie, and I consider to be the number 3 starter in the league. Number 2 is Carey Price. Carey Price is only number 2 because he got hurt last year, and until he appears to be back to being the dominant Carey Price, I'm going to hold off on putting him at number 1 on this list. Price has been an excellent goaltender. He is a generational talent in the net, and losing him is the reason Montreal missed the playoffs last year. And it's funny because I keep seeing people say, things along the lines of, well, Montreal's team sucked, and getting Carey Price back isn't going to fix everything. Here's the thing. Montreal hasn't had a very good team, but they've made the playoffs with Carey Price. Montreal has never been an intimidating team. They had Subban, now they have Weber, but up front, you have Pacioretty, and then there's a bunch of movable parts and replaceable parts. Carey Price is the reason Montreal was making the playoffs, and if he's back, he's the reason they make the playoffs again. It's just that simple. And I don't like it because I'm not a Montreal fan. Believe me, I don't want to say these things. And number one, I have Braden Holtby in Washington. He can play 70 games. He can be consistent through 70 games. And then he still has something left for the playoffs. So he doesn't seem to have a wall. He is smart. His positional play is fantastic. And psychologically, he is one of the best I've seen in a long time. And he has the capability, if he can stay healthy and Washington stays, at the top. You could be looking at a guy who wins 500 games before he retires. And puts up fantastic stats. Wins aren't everything. But when you get all those wins for one team, and that team says he's our guy, and, that's it. Nobody else is going to get a shot at his job. That does say something. And I think Holtby's going to be that guy. So we'll see. Is my list going to be right? Maybe, maybe not. This isn't a, oh, if this was a fantasy, you draft these 10 guys. If this is fantasy, I'd have Luongo in here because I think Florida's going to win a lot of games. And fantasy usually goes by wins, shutouts, goals against, potentially, and save percentage, potentially. But yeah, this is just who I think are the top 10 starters. That's why Rene's not in here either. I think Rene's, he's one of those guys who was the last ones that eliminated from being the top 10 list. I'm not sold on Rene at this point. I'm really not. He was a tough one to say, nah, I don't put him in the top 10. And like I said, this list in general is really tough to crack because I really think goaltending has gone to that next level. Where guys who would have been dominant starters 20 years ago are backups right now. Their numbers are crazy. The save percentage in the NHL just keeps going up. The thing that I find funny is, of course, people will look and go, oh, well, you need to shrink goalie equipment. Maybe. But, I've seen goalies say it's just going to make me faster if you make my equipment smaller. So I'll make more saves that way. You make it more lightweight, smaller equipment. Technically, they should be able to get better lateral movement and just better reflexes in general. I don't think there's a way to stop goalies from being good. I don't think you should penalize them for being good either. Because when you got one of these 10 guys, the current goal-scoring drought in the NHL doesn't really bother you. Because as long as you got one of these 10 guys, you've got a shot. And the surprising one for me is Martin Jones. But they went to the final, and he was the starter the whole season, and he looked great. I can't deny him his spot on the list. Bobrovsky, if he has another poor season this year, there's no way he would make the list next year. The thing too is, and I look at Lundqvist, and he's a lightning rod. Is Lundqvist still? The thing with Lundqvist is he set the bar so unrealistically high for himself. It's the same thing Luongo did. To some extent, Luongo did have down seasons, though. Luongo had years where his numbers dipped, and you could tell he wasn't happy, or he wasn't feeling right, or he was unhealthy. There was something. Lundqvist has just been steady, very steady. So when you set that bar steady and you're at a really, really huge high level, it is really hard to maintain that. And then when you drop down a little bit, and your team isn't great either, and I don't think I'm insulting Rangers fans to say, their team isn't, President's Trophy winners this year, and if they make the playoffs, they're not one of the top two in the division. When you're playing for a team that's, that middle 10 pack, not at the top 10, um, and you're the one holding it there, if your game slips, it's going to be more noticeable. If Lundqvist played in Carolina or Arizona, I don't think there'd be as much argument about it, but because it's the Rangers, people get really passionate about either their love or hatred of the Rangers. There are certain, all the original six, that happens. And any Canadian team, that happens. You have passionate, I love this team, and passionate hate this team. With my channel, I try to stay out of all that. Once the season starts, it's going to be more difficult for me to stay out of that. Because honestly, there are certain teams I cheer for and certain teams I don't. And once the season starts and I'm previewing games I can stay like this and very neutral and emotionally, calm. After a game, especially if it's one of my favorite teams winning and it's this big comeback overtime win, it's going to be really hard for me to stay settled. But that's part of the fun of being a hockey fan, and I guess we'll see how that goes when the season starts. But we've got another 2 months before that happens. And we got to wait almost until the U.S. election, and the U.S. election is interminably far away. Before we get hockey, I want hockey now. There was 2 magazines I noticed yesterday that were out, but they're both World Cup previews, and they're kind of not going to work because there's guys who are already subbing in, like Richard Raquel got added to Sweden yesterday, so he's not going to be in those magazines. And they're not going to talk about who he subbed out for, so I don't know. I guess we'll see how the World Cup shakes down. I have my own opinions on it, as has been stated on this channel numerous times, but I'm more excited for the regular season and to see if my top 10 goaltenders are my top 10 goaltenders, or if I'm completely off base. I don't think so, especially with the top 5, and having Quick in the top 5 is gonna, especially with fans of the other California teams, I'm gonna get, where's John Gibson? Gibson hasn't been a starter for a full season yet. After Gibson's been a starter for a full season and shown he can play 50 games and he can keep his level up, no. Anderson was the starter in Anaheim last year. Why isn't Anderson on the list? Because Anderson can't knock Tuukka Rask out of that spot. I cannot, in good conscience, put Frederik Anderson ahead of Tuukka Rask. I can't. Is he top 20? Absolutely. Is he top 10? No. I think that there was something else too that was mentioned yesterday, that Jimmy Vesey and all these fan bases were arguing over who was going to get him, and then when he signs with the Rangers, immediately people are like, well, he's going to be a bust. Anybody expecting Vesey to be a superstar? Yeah, he'll be a bust. He's not a superstar. He was a free prospect who was highly likely to score 40-plus points this year on an entry-level contract. Every GM in the league salivates at that because the salary cap being what it is, if you can get a guy in an entry-level contract that can guarantee you points in the lineup, and you don't have to spend time watching him in the AHL, you don't have to send him back to juniors, he can just go right in the lineup. That's gold. So that's why there were so many teams bidding on him. He's the only way he's a bust is if he scores like 8 goals this year, scores less than 30 points. The only trick is when these guys come out of college, you're seeing the finished product. So when they come out and they score 45 points, and then I look at an annual and it goes, next year's the big jump, 65 points. And it's like, you guys are crazy. He's already what he's going to be. It's not the same as a guy coming out of junior at 19 years of age. These college guys are usually 22, 23. What you see is what you get. So that's where it is with VC. I don't see him as a potential flop, but I'm not expecting him to score 30 goals. I'm not expecting him to be a highlight of the night candidate every night. And there doesn't have to be this beast or flop mentality, but it does seem to be out there that a guy's one or the other. Sometimes you're just a good player. But anyways, that's my top 10 goaltenders, and I will be back later with other videos. Thanks for watching.